Hi, welcome back to Brooks's Bass Corner. Today I've got a slightly different video for you. This is as a result of various conversations with fans of the channel who've asked me many questions about the various basses I've got in my collection. Various basses you may have already seen on the channel through videos, demo videos, review videos, and also on some of the live chats. So I thought I'd give you an insight into the basses in my collection, my personal collection, some of the stories as to why I bought them, when I bought them, and what I use them for today. So I'm going to run through the collection in chronological order, going from the earliest bass that I bought through to the most recent one. And from time to time you're going to see various photos and video footage taken throughout my career where I've used these basses. We've got 33 basses to go through here. If you don't want to watch the whole video, that's cool. In the description box below you'll find each bass broken down into a chapter. So you can either click on the link in the description box, or underneath this video on the timeline you'll see various dots that indicate where the chapters are. If you run your mouse pointer across those dots, it will tell you which chapter we're at. Any review videos or demo videos here on the channel relating to these basses will be listed in the description box below. You'll also find links to various playlists in the description box. From time to time you'll see cards appear in the top right hand corner which link through to various videos and playlists here on the channel. So if you've got any questions or comments relating to the basses in this video, leave them in the comments box and I'll come back to you as soon as I can. You'll find affiliate links to various basses, strings and accessories in the description box below. Any purchases you make through the affiliate links will financially help the channel. So if you're comfortable and you're ready, I'll get on with the show. So in the current collection, this is my earliest bass, although there were two basses before this one, a Marlin Sidewinder and a Hohner Jack bass in a natural finish. Both of those were sold on. This bass number one in this video, is a Fender Precision Lyte. These came out in the late 80s and this was bought on my 18th birthday in April 1990 from Soho Soundhouse in London. Not sure where the years have gone. Why did I buy it? I actually saved a load of money on my weekend job that I did while I was at A-level college, and I put a load of money aside to buy a really good bass, but I ended up with this. No, I was actually looking on my birthday at loads of different basses. I was a kid of 18 with a big long list of basses that I thought were great, or certain basses I wanted to buy, and on the day I went looking I couldn't find anything that really stood out. The one bass I saw and played was a white JD Supernatural that was at the Bass Centre in Wapping, and the price tag on it was huge and I just didn't really want to spend that amount of money. I'd been looking at the Precision Lyte for quite a while. It was a Fender with active electronics. The light nature of it sold itself to me, so I bought it. So here we go. So this was my first sort of delve into proper quality basses. I've replaced the pickups. These are Seymour Duncan EQ pickups. Not exactly sure of the model name, but basically they have EQ filter switches on here to change the tone. But it's got a 2-band EQ, volume, pickup pan. It's doing okay. It's still here. What did I buy it for? But basically just to start using a professional standard instrument. These days I don't tend to do many gigs with it. It was always a backup bass once I started buying other instruments, but it still gets used now and again. Sometimes use it mainly for practice at home. So a year later, after I've bought the Fender Precision Lyte, I decided to go back up to London and look at some more basses. Early May 1991, I find myself in Denmark Street in a shop called Sutakina Music, which was across Charing Cross Road from Soho Soundhouse, where I'd bought the Fender Precision Lyte. At the time, Kubicki Factors were all the rage. They were in various shops, various music shops. Soho Soundhouse had a couple, and this coral pink one was in Sutakina. So I was actually up in London to see Billy Sheehan and Mr. Big play at Hammersmith Odeon for Mr. Big's first ever London show, which was in the evening. So during the day, clearly I went bass shopping and I found this bass. Why did I buy it? I was a big fan of John Taylor from Duran Duran, big fan of Stuart Hamm, big fan of Vale Johnson. Although I didn't necessarily want the coral pink, I wanted a white one, a black one, a red one, a blue one, or any colour other than the coral pink. But as I later found out from Phil Kubicki himself, there weren't many of these made. The bass dates back to July 1989. It was part of a batch that Fender made using Kubicki parts. But it's one of a batch of about 200 where the necks weren't sealed before they were varnished. So over a year and a half, this neck would shift about like crazy, and I could never get my head around it. I just didn't understand why the neck would be fine one minute and like a banana the next. When I was at university in 1992, I contacted Phil via a Unix news group. We had a chat and I said to him, look, I've got this bass and the neck is all over the place. And he said, tell me the serial number. So I gave it to him. He said, oh no, that's one of a batch that Fender made and they didn't seal the multi-laminate neck. Take the neck off, send it back to me, I'll fix it and send it back to you. Which he did, and the neck never moved again. So aside from the occasional truss rod adjustment, it's been fine. The only thing that changed was in 2002, I wanted to have a fretless in my collection. I didn't necessarily want to sell the bass. I got Bernie Goodfellow to defret the neck, put in some maple lines, and so we have a line fretless, and the bass is still in use. I don't use the bass so much these days. I've got other basses that take priority, but it's still here in the collection. Many stories to tell. So in 2001, when I was starting to put my bass collection seriously together, I realized I needed a semi-acoustic bass. Looking around, the Washburns had always been highly regarded, certainly through the late 80s and through the 90s. These particular models ceased production around about 93, 94, maybe 95. This was the top of the range at the time. This is the Washburn AB40. So we got volume, bass, treble, but it has a tone all of its own. Lee Sklar uses one of these and has done in the past. I had a chat with him about his particular instrument a couple of years ago, and he absolutely waxed lyrical about these basses. I've used this probably on about 90 to 95% of the acoustic gigs I've ever had to do. Used it on sessions, used it on recordings, and it's always been absolutely fabulous. So if you can track one of these down, an AB40, go for it. A little side story for this, I bought this second hand from a gentleman who had advertised it in Lyte, which was an adverts paper here in the UK. He was bought this bass by his wife on their wedding day, and this was his wedding present. But after a number of years, he realized he'd never actually picked it up, played it, or done anything with it. I can't remember the guy. I certainly don't remember his name, but if by chance you're watching this video, if I bought this off you, I think you lived in Oakwood at the time, I can assure you this bass has been well used over the years, so thank you very much for selling it to me. So in 2001, I needed to take the plunge into the world of 5-string basses, as I didn't have one in the collection. I was a big fan of Man StingRay basses. I had Mark King's original 1990 model as a 4-string, so I decided to opt for a 5-string StingRay, and this one appeared in the Bass Centre in Wapping, as it then was, in April 2001, and I took possession of it a couple of days after 9/11, so September 2001. A slightly different 5-string in terms of being a StingRay, because it's got a status graphite neck as a replacement. The bass has actually been to Australia with me when I toured with Bonnie Tyler in 2006. So here's some live footage of me playing with Bonnie Tyler and her band in Melbourne, Australia in 2006. It features all the usual StingRay 5 hallmarks. We've got 6-bolt neck, 3-way position switch, 3-band EQ, Alnico pickup. It is everything a 5-string StingRay should be. If you're really enjoying the video, feel free to hit the subscribe button, hit the notification bell so you get notifications when I post up new videos, and if you'd like to give the video a thumbs up, I'd really appreciate it. So being a fan of Kubicki Ex-Factor basses, in 2001 this 1988 Phil Kubicki made model came up for sale. Back then the second-hand prices were a lot more competitive than they are today. So it's a 1988 model, all the standard X-Factor features you would expect to see. It's an absolute gem. It plays quite differently and sounds quite different to the fretless model you would have seen earlier, but a great bass all round. Why did I buy it? Well, again, big John Taylor fan, Duran Duran fan, and a fan of these basses generally. They truly have a sound all of their own. So the fact I was able to acquire this was no mean feat. A stunner. The only downside for me with Kubicki Factors is the fact there's no mid-range EQ on this. I love all the ergonomics, I love the body sculpting, the extender to drop the string down to a low D. Everything about it is great. The only thing it was missing is a mid EQ. Okay, this here is an original Status and Trace Elliot T-Bass, one of the original 15 that were made to commemorate Trace Elliott's 15th anniversary back in 1995. There were 15 4-strings and 15 5-strings. This is number 11. The guy I bought it from in 2002 didn't really know what he had, and he was selling it to fund putting some LEDs in his Warwick. And as soon as I saw this bass, having seen the advert that he was selling it through, I knew exactly what it was. Sadly, he didn't look after it particularly well, and the neck was all gouged out because he used to play with a thumb ring, and there are various burn marks, and someone has used a black felt tip marker pen, and there are various scrapes and dings. It wasn't well looked after, but I knew what the bass was, and it sounds remarkable. Those of you who know what this bass is, there's the tortoiseshell control plate. As you can see, it's buckled in several places, and that's exactly what was happening to the scratch plate, which is why I've replaced it with this sort of white and black pearloid plate. I've still got the original plate, but I couldn't have a scratch plate that was all buckled up. It would have been really annoying, but it's fabulous. So for fans of the channel, I'm sure this bass doesn't need any introduction. You'll have seen it on the Bass String Experiment series and various other demos and review videos here on the channel. So this is a Status Graphite Empathy bass, LEDs in, of course. If you're not familiar with this model, it's a wooden body with a graphite through neck. This was the top of the range model for Status from about 1990, 91 through till about 2001. So this bass phased out the original Series 2, and then the Series 2 Classic phased this model out. So it has 11 piece laminate body, 3-band EQ with a mid sweep. So I bought this bass 2 days before my 30th birthday in April 2002, but the bass was actually made in 1998, but was sold as a collection of several basses by a retailer in West London. And it's been all around the world. I've done thousands of gigs with this bass. It's got a few scars, a few battle scars here and there. I've installed a D'Addario micro tuner here on the back. The LEDs were fitted about 6 months after I bought it. The backup from Status Graphite has always been exceptional. So I've used this bass on thousands of gigs. It's traveled the world with me. It's never let me down, and it's still got thousands of gigs left in it. So here we have a 1990, maybe a 91, Status Graphite Series 2000, all graphite bass with a wooden core, with LEDs of course. So I bought this bass in May 2002 from a young bass playing upstart called Stuart Clayton. Hi Stu. Many of you will know from his own Bassline publishing and his own YouTube channel, and also one of my fellow writers at Bass Guitar Magazine and Bass Player over the years. So this was Stuart's bass that he actually used for many years and used to draw up the Level 42 and Mark King tuition tablature books. It was all done and worked out using this bass. So I was a little surprised that he wanted to sell it in 2002, but more than happy that he did. So it's in very safe hands. It was used for many gigs, and it still occasionally gets taken out and used on gigs and sessions and what have you. It has a sound all of its own. None of my other Status basses sound anything like this bass, and it's very much of its time. So early 90, 91, very twangy, lots of bottom end, quite unlike lots of other Series 2000s that came before it. At one time I had 5 of these, and I needed to pick which one I was going to keep, and they all sounded different, which was very strange, but just the nature of these basses. This one won. If you're enjoying the video and you'd like to contribute to the continuation of the channel, feel free to hit the super thanks button below the video screen. So in 2002, I decided to look at new amplification, which led me to the doorway of Bernie Goodfellow of GB Guitars here in the UK. Bernie and GB Guitars were the UK distributor for EBS amplification, and Bernie made his own basses. So while I was demoing the amplification, naturally the conversation moved on to his fabulous guitars. I purposely said to myself, I'm not going to buy a GB guitar. I've got more than enough basses. Well, we know that's not true. No one ever has enough basses. Fast forward to 2003, and I'm then taking a couple of Bernie's demo basses out on gigs. And I decided to make a GB guitar, this particular Rumour, my first custom bass purchase. So this was made for me. It's a colour that Bernie calls Kingfisher Blue. It does change colour depending on the light and where it's being played and where it's been stored and what have you. Sometimes it looks blue, sometimes it looks green, sometimes it looks aqua, but it's a Rumour model, slightly bigger and fatter around the whole body shape. I added on about an inch all the way round. There's another Rumour there. This has slightly slimmer body, thinner horns. This one's got a fatter body and bigger horns. So it's a multi-laminate neck with the LED package in, and we've got LEDs in the headstock, and it was made for me, so Bernie's signed it on the reverse of the headstock. It plays great, sounds great. It was my main gigging bass for 4 or 5 years. I've been using it extensively since we came out of lockdown. It just sounds amazing and looks the business. So in 2003 I was called up to do a session where they wanted me to bring a jazz bass. At the time, the only jazz influenced bass I had in my collection was the Status Trace Elliot T bass. 2 single coils, active, based on a Super Jazz. I recorded the tracks, the producer was happy, and then he said, your bass hasn't got Fender on the headstock. I said, no, this is a T bass, this is sort of quite moved on from a Fender Jazz. He said, well, I really like your playing and I love your sound, but your bass hasn't got Fender on the headstock. I said, well look, we're not being videoed, so if the tones on the recording you're happy with, job done. Yeah, but your bass hasn't got Fender on the headstock. To placate this guy, and also to address the fact that I didn't have a Fender Jazz in my collection, I was already a big Marcus Miller fan anyway, and the Marcus signature jazz bass was already out there selling like hotcakes. So I went on a bit of a voyage of discovery and came across this model secondhand, bought in February 2005. The control set is slightly different, as you'll notice. That's because it's been, the original active circuit's been replaced with a John East Marcus retro circuit. So this is tuned, and the whole circuit is based more around Marcus's active tone. So there's various mid EQ and an extra treble boost and all sorts of jiggery pokery going on here. Otherwise the bass is as it was when it left the production line. A great bass, great sound. You know that jazz bass sound as soon as you hear it. Used it on loads of gigs, quite a few sessions, and it still comes out occasionally. You'll find affiliate links to various basses, strings and accessories in the description box below. Any purchases you make through the affiliate links will financially help the channel. So in 2005 I was approached to play in a Green Day tribute band called Green Days. At the time the Mike Dirnt signature precision bass had just been launched onto the market. I could have easily used any general precision bass, but I thought if we're going to do this properly, might as well get the Mike Dirnt model. So on this it's got a 59 precision pickup. You've got the general slab body design, Telecaster headstock, and I bought this in July 2005 and it did every Green Day tribute gig that I've ever done. And when that band folded, I could easily have sold the bass on, but it sounds great and it sounds unlike any of the other precisions I've got. It's currently strung with rotor sound flat wounds, just to give it a different sound. My other precisions are loaded up with rotor sound swing bass steel strings, round wound, so a very different tone. So if I get called up for a session or a gig and I need to have a precision with flat wounds, this is the go-to. The neck is like a baseball bat. It is really thick, very deep, but it's a great bass to play, great sound, and it's in a lovely butterscotch yellow, which allegedly is called vintage white. It doesn't look very white to me, but there we go. So in 2006 I already had my GB Rumour 4-string, the Kingfisher Blue model. I decided I wanted to try and get hold of a Rumour 5-string, GB guitars, of course, and several models kept sort of coming up on the second-hand market. I didn't have the money at the time to buy a brand new custom build, so it was a case of keeping my eye open for a second-hand specimen. So while I was preparing the tracks to go on tour with Bonnie Tyler, this particular bass appeared. When I first went to see this bass, it was not this colour. It was kind of a thick chocolate brown, which kind of looked okay, but I wasn't really sold on it. But I knew I could change the colour and have the finish resprayed. What I didn't know was that this was one of the original prototype basses for UK session ace Lawrence Cottle. So when Lawrence originally approached Bernie Goodfellow to build him a bass, Bernie built several different prototype basses to get an idea of what Lawrence wanted in an instrument, and this was one of them. So when Lawrence decided this wasn't the bass he wanted, it went back to Bernie, and then Bernie sold it on at a trade show. So the guy that bought it from the trade show then sold it to me. So it's a Rumour 5-string, nothing particularly out of the ordinary. It's got side LEDs, which I had installed. Didn't feel the need to have front-facing ones as well. The sides were more than adequate. I've used this on a whole bunch of gigs, but because I don't do lots and lots of work that requires a 5-string, this probably doesn't get as many outings as it deserves, but it sounds phenomenal. Very different to the Man StingRay V, I can assure you. It's also got a 35-inch scale length, so that low B really stands out, and a great bass, really great bass. So having sold my previous Man StingRay 4-string that had belonged to Mark King of Level 42, by 2007 I was missing having those 4-string tones in my bass collection. So this bass came up on eBay, and I bought it second hand. It's a 1999 StingRay, so it's got the oil finish on the neck, no more gloss finishes on this bass. Although the bass sounded great, I did replace the humbucking pickup with the Aguilar model, and I've also replaced the circuit with a John East Music Man replacement. So now I have a push-pull on the volume that gives me a treble response like the Music Man Sabre bass. We have treble, we have a mid-range with a mid-range sweep, and we have bass, which is a little more flexible than the original StingRay circuit. 6-bolt neck, teal finish, abalone scratch plate. A winner. I've been a big fan of Spector basses since seeing a session player called Kasim Sultan play with Hall & Oates in Bournemouth in 1990 on their Change of Season tour. He had a NS2 Spector which sounded absolutely immense. From that point on, I wanted to get hold of a Spector, but trying to get hold of American NS2s here in the UK always proved a little difficult. So when Spector introduced the Euro range, suddenly that was on my radar. In 2008, lots of Spector basses were being sold cheap through the retail channel here in the UK to make room for new models and new ranges that were coming through. I managed to pick this bass up brand new, quite cheaply, and it plays absolutely fantastically. Everything you'd expect a Spector to be, and many players consider the Euro LXs to only be very slightly less in terms of provenance than the American NS2s. Sometimes you can get lucky and get a Euro LX that just plays better than an NS2. I think I did pretty well with this one, but it plays great, sounds great, upgraded the controls, but everything a Spector should be. If you're really enjoying the video, feel free to hit the subscribe button, hit the notification bell so you get notifications when I post up new videos, and if you'd like to give the video a thumbs up, I'd really appreciate it. Wind the clock back to 2005 and I saw this bass, a GB Guitars Spitfire, being prepared at Bernie Goodfellow's workshop for the customer that had ordered it. Then, a couple of years later, it turned up on eBay, and I knew what the bass was as soon as I saw it. So someone had bought it from the original customer, and now I was buying it from that guy. So it's a GB Guitars Spitfire based on Bernie's vision of a jazz bass, but without all the bad points and lots of good points. It's a great playing bass, sounds amazing. It's got the GB circuit in, and it's also got the G-spot tuner. By clicking on it, it gives you a G tuned pitch, and from that you can tune your G string. on the bass and then tune the other strings via harmonics. A great playing bass, and I think you'll agree it looks fabulous. I'd been a fan of Billy Sheehan since 1988. Had always wanted to own one of the Yamaha Attitude basses, and in 2010 a fine gentleman decided to put this bass up for sale on eBay. So this is a Yamaha Attitude Limited II. Anyone that knows Billy Sheehan and Billy Sheehan's playing will know exactly what these basses are capable of. So you've got stereo outputs, twin pickups, woofer pickup in the neck, split coil in the regular split coil position. We've got the hip shot low extender on the headstock. This thing is built like a tank, but it plays great. Scallop neck as well in the higher regions of the neck, and it just sounds immense. A really great bass, well put together to Billy's specification, and it just absolutely nails the Billy Sheehan tone. And it sounds even better when you run it in stereo. So thank you to the gentleman that sold this to me on eBay. So back in 1990, Status broke with their traditions of headless instruments and created their first headed instrument. This is the Matrix bass, and it caused quite a stir at the time it was launched. In 2011, having been looking for one of these for quite a while, a gentleman decided to put it out for sale again on Bass Chat, on the Bass Chat forum, and I went and checked it out, and it was everything I expected it to be. In my opinion, my humble opinion, Mark King got one of his best bass tones and bass sounds using one of these basses on the run of shows that they did in December 1990. So they did a run of shows at Hammersmith Odeon, 15 nights. They also did a 3-night warm-up sort of preamble to the tour where they were playing at universities across the UK. I heard the very first night, and he used one of these basses along with his Alembics, and the tone on this bass is just off the charts. There is a live recording from Capital Radio on YouTube of Mark using this bass. I'll put a link in the description box. And this, well, not this particular bass, but this bass model absolutely will take your head off. The actual sound, the tone is immense, and like I say, one of Mark's best bass tones in my opinion. So in 2006, Mark Goodday of Ashdown Engineering decided to create a bass range for Ashdown. Mark had been integral in the design of the T-bass with Rob Green at Status when they were producing that bass model in 1995, when Mark was still at Trace Elliot. So wind the clock forward to 2006, and Mark is looking for a T-bass to borrow to be able to create his new range of basses, to give him some of the ideas that he already had done before. I met up with Mark. He knew I had an original T-bass, as you've seen earlier in this video. They used that bass as the template for what became this bass. So this is the Lodestone Primal-Pro. As you can see, it features several aspects of the T-bass design, namely the angled headstock, the angled tuners. The general layout is of a super jazz bass format. Slightly different lines and angles and contours on this bass, which hark back to Mark's love of racing cars and Lotus. A lot of money was poured into the design of these basses regarding ceramic fret design. The idea being that the ceramic would never break down or wear away. In the end, after a lot of research and design, they decided just to incorporate the ceramic aspect at the bridge saddles. Little did they know that by 2015, on this bass, the bridge saddles had actually worn down. But these basses came to market around 2009-2010, and by 2012, they were available all over the place. Lots of stores available second-hand on the second-hand market, and the prices weren't that high. And I went through a couple of months in 2012 picking up various basses. Various Lodestone basses in different finishes. This one is obviously a sunburst model, but I ended up with 4 Lodestones in my collection. I sold 2 on, and I kept 2. You'll see another one shortly. But for this bass, because I'd already kept another one that had the EMG single coil pickups. A couple of years later, in 2016, I decided to have this bass retrofitted with some Sims Super Quad pickups. So anyone that doesn't know what these pickups can do, they have 4 coils in there. You can create a split coil pickup like a Precision. With a flick of the switch, the LED goes green and it suddenly becomes a single coil pickup like a jazz bass. And another flick of the switch, it goes blue, and then all 4 coils in there become a humbucking pickup. Clearly I've got 2 units, so I can have all 3 options on that pickup and all 3 options on that pickup, which creates so many options, tonal diversity. And also I replaced the preamp with a John East Uni-Pre. So I've got various controls, boosts, mid-range sweep, all sorts of things going on with this bass. So basically it's a super jazz bass with all the possible pickup and tonal configurations that you can throw at it. And it plays really, really well. If you're enjoying the video and you'd like to contribute to the continuation of the channel, feel free to hit the super thanks button below the video screen. So as I just mentioned, I went through a phase of picking up Lodestone basses relatively cheaply. I sold 2 on. I kept the Sunburst one, which now has the Sims Super Quad pickups, and I kept this one. So a white and gold Lodestone Primal-Pro. This is the original configuration, as all the Lodestones were. There were some that had split coil Precision pickups, but generally they had the 2 single coil format like a jazz bass. So you've got 2 volumes, bass, cut and boost, treble cut and boost. Again, on this model, the ceramic saddles. Hopefully these won't crack, otherwise I'm going to have to source some other components to replace them with. But again, a great playing bass, very Larry Graham, I think you'll agree. So my influences have got the better of me again. In 2013, I finally managed to get hold of this Aria Pro 2 SB1000 Super Bass. Being a big fan of John Taylor and Duran Duran in my formative years, clearly there was going to come a day where I was going to buy one of these. But not just because of Duran Duran's use of them. These are great basses, and they were over every band, every track and album during the 80s. Then there's various rock affiliations with the like of Cliff Burton from Metallica, Jack Bruce. These are still great basses, quite heavy, a little bit chunky, but the prices just seem to keep going up and up and up. And with this noise killer circuit, which is a low filter, you get a whole range of different tones out of it. So with one pickup, you might think it's quite limited. It isn't. So by the summer and autumn of 1988, I'd been playing bass for about a year. I'd already heard this name, Alembic. Didn't know the full history, but every time I went in a bass store, if I saw a poster with an Alembic, or I listened in on certain conversations amongst pro players, Alembics came up into the conversation. By that time I knew who Stanley Clarke was, so I knew he was using Alembics. And then Mark King started using them, which coincided with the release of Level 42's album Staring at the Sun. Mark was doing loads of promotion, had LEDs in the bass, looked amazing. A 16-year-old Mike was a little gobsmacked, to say the least. Over time, and having seen Level 42 on the corresponding tour that went with the Staring at the Sun album, I became a huge fan of Alembic basses. I just loved the tones that Mark, Stanley Clarke, John Entwistle, John Paul Jones, and a million other players that use Alembics were getting out of their instruments. It took me a long time to pluck up the courage to put the money aside to save for one of these instruments. They aren't cheap, they're rarities. You don't see Alembics turn up in shops very often. Over here in the UK, they're even rarer. So in 2014, I'd put money aside to buy an Alembic, not knowing quite which model I was going to get or how I was going to get hold of one. But I wanted to make sure I had the money aside that if one came up second hand, I could go and buy it. We roll around to the end of January, and this bass came up for sale at the Bass Gallery in Camden here in London. Thankfully, a colleague of mine, who I know very well, was aware that I was looking for an Alembic if one came up, and he gave me a call and said, "We've got a 20th anniversary Alembic just come in. Would you be interested in trying it out?" I said, "Absolutely. Can you hold that bass till tomorrow? I will make sure I'm there." I went and tried it. There were several other guys in the shop looking to buy this bass, so if I didn't want it, they were going to snap it up. I plugged it in, played it, And I said, guys, you better go and get the tube home. This is coming home with me. So I bought it for my 42nd birthday in 2014. But obviously I had to buy it a couple of months prior to my birthday. It's a great bass. I've used it on a few gigs. I tend to use it on gigs where there's going to be some room, so I'm not going to bash it or knock it, but it has a tone all of its own. And because it's a 20th anniversary model, the electronics are quite different, the pickups are quite different. So it doesn't sound like a Series 1 or a Series 2. Check one out if you ever get the chance. So in 2014, I took a trip to Israel, which was a yearly trip I did with my covers band at the time. And on that trip, on the return journey home, my Status Graphite Empathy bass went walkabout due to the security services in Tel Aviv airport. The bass disappeared for 5 days. No one could track it, no one knew where it was, and eventually it did come back to my doorstep here in the UK, but it left me a little concerned that it wasn't the first time it had happened. I decided I was going to buy a cheaper bass to do travel gigs abroad with, and originally I was going to maybe just use a Fender Jazz, a cheap Jazz, maybe a Squire, and use an EQ pedal to portray an active EQ circuit, which is what I prefer on my performing basses. I didn't get far down that road before this Ibanez ATK400, which is a cheaper model made in Korea, not one of the Japanese built basses, but anyway, still a very fine bass. I'd been aware of ATKs for many years, since they came out in 93, 94. So I knew what they were capable of, and basically this bass was on eBay, and it was being sold by a lady who had bought it for her son, and her other son had been bought a guitar. So this was back in the early 2000s. Basically these kids never played the instruments. They went in their cases, got put in the loft, and sat there for the best part of 14 years. So anyway, this bass came up, I bought it, and then this became my travel bass. And it's great. It's really flexible, great tones, really playable. It's built like a tank. It really is, but it does the job very well. So no longer do my nice, expensive bass guitars get lost. If this one gets lost, I can deal with it. But anyway, a sound performer. You'll find affiliate links to various basses, strings, and accessories in the description box below. Any purchases you make through the affiliate links will financially help the channel. So in January 2015, I have an interview with Neil Fairclough, the touring bassist with Queen and Adam Lambert. The interview is meant to last 30 minutes. We end up talking for 3 hours. On that day, a really great friendship has been formed. Later that day, I'm going to see Queen and Adam Lambert at the O2 in London. So what do you do to kill the rest of the time? Well, clearly you go bass shopping. So I took a quick visit up to the bass gallery in Camden, not knowing what basses were in stock. I hadn't been there for a couple of months. As I walked through the door, one of the fine gentlemen in the bass gallery said, have you come to see the Alembic? I said, I don't know what you're talking about. What do you mean? He said, well, you know someone's brought in a whole collection of basses. I was like, no, I haven't a clue. Took me to the back of the store, and there was this Mark King signature Alembic. It's a signature standard, not the deluxe. That didn't matter. I plugged the bass in and knew instantly that it sounded completely different to the 20th anniversary model. Completely different. It's like chalk and cheese. So this was coming home with me, but I wasn't going to take it to the O2 in London, so I had to wait a couple of weeks until I could pick it up. I've used this on quite a few gigs. I've also used it on demo videos for Uncle Funk's Disco Inferno. Find links in the description box. And this bass is outstanding, but like the 20th anniversary model, not to be used on a cramped stage, but it sounds absolutely off the scale. So in 2016, I found myself doing lots of acoustic duos and acoustic trios, and I needed a backup instrument in case the Washburn AB40 had a problem, snapped a string, battery went down. So I decided to buy one of the cheaper models from the current range. This is a Washburn AB10. You often find the black one, occasionally a sunburst, but rarely. But I quite like this rather fetching white with like a cream binding. It's certainly not the same bass as the AB40, but it certainly does the job as a backup instrument. It's got preamp, Washburn preamp, 4-band EQ and tuner built in. It's all on the side. Considering the price, it's done pretty well. but it's always good as a backup, and it has a fine tone all of its own. I've got Rote Sound pressure wounds on here, and they just seem like a good cross between round wounds and flat wounds to get a fairly good acoustic tone. With all the grief trying to get basses to gigs in Europe and abroad using budget airlines, it's become a whole load of grief. So in 2017 I decided I wanted to get a status bass, but not with a full-size body, something that would be relatively small enough for me to carry on as hand luggage, not knowing that by 2018 pretty much all instruments now are banned from the internal cabins of airplanes. So in 2017 a friend of mine decided to put this Status Streamline 4-string up for sale. It was a custom order. The previous owner to him had it spec'd out, so it's a 32-inch scale, a satin neck, side wraparound LEDs. They're not meant to be hyper bright, they're meant to be just to help the player see what they're doing. A couple of other little features the guy spec'd, but it's really small, and with the signature Status tone. Little did I know that trying to take any instrument into an airplane cabin was going to become really difficult. So I haven't used it on that many trips. I think I've only done 2 or 3 trips with this. The joy of it, when you can get away with it, is the fact that in a decent sized gig bag you can actually carry this straight down the spine of your body, and then if you can get it into a baggage overhead locker, you're halfway there, aren't you? But it's not always possible, and sometimes you still got to check these instruments in. But the bass is great, very lightweight, very easy to play, and again, like I say, the signature Status tone. So what's not to love? Some people have a real problem with the body dimensions and the shape. They think it's kind of ugly. I'm not really bothered as long as it sounds good, and it does the gigs. And like I say, I have used it on a few shows abroad, and it's really done the business. Okay, as a writer for Bass Guitar magazine and bass player, I've reviewed hundreds of basses over the years, as well as what I've got in my own collection. Lots and lots of basses have passed through my grubby mitts. I've had the good fortune to play lots of Dingwalls and done lots of reviews of them, and I've always been really impressed by what Sheldon Dingwall and his team do at Dingwall Guitars. So I had playing experience because of reviews, playing NG2s and combustions, and I played a few at various bass stores here in the UK. I really liked the body and the styling, fan fret necks and the multi-scale dimensions really kind of works for me. I was really over impressed with the low B string performance as well. So an opportunity came up to own one of these lovely Ferrari yellow NG2 5-strings, and I jumped at the chance. It's been great. I've used it on a few gigs, few shows. It's a very different sound to the other 5-strings I've got here in the collection. A very focused sound, and quite bright and very mid-heavy, but that's fine. Again, that was one of the reasons why I wanted to buy it. Very different tones to what I've already got with the 5-string StingRay and the 5-string GB Guitars Rumour. A fine instrument. If you've not had a chance to try a Dingwall, I suggest you do, they're fabulous. If you're really enjoying the video, feel free to hit the subscribe button, hit the notification bell so you get notifications when I post up new videos, and if you'd like to give the video a thumbs up, I'd really appreciate it. So here we have a semi-acoustic Ibanez SRH500-DEF bass workshop bass. So it's semi-acoustic, has piezo bridge, independent volumes for each string, and I bought this in 2017 after having reviewed one several months earlier for Bass Guitar magazine. I was really taken with the performance of these basses. Really loved the tone, loved the playability. Actually was considering buying it and having it made into a fretless until I was told that they would be producing a fretless model. I've kept this one fretted. Hopefully at some point I'll acquire a fretless version, fulfill that requirement, but these are exceptional basses, very light, not that expensive, and I've used it on not only acoustic gigs, but I've used it on full electric band gigs, and it more than held its own. Fitted with the Dario flat wounds at the moment, which came as standard, and they really suit this bass. So if you're looking for a cheap, lightweight, very playable semi-acoustic bass, this might well just fit the requirements. So I've been a huge Queen and John Deacon fan all my life. For many years, I didn't play in any Queen tributes. The only time I'd play any Queen songs were in various cover bands that might cover the odd big hit. So when I left my last full-time covers band in 2018, I started getting phone calls from a couple of different Queen tributes just to see if I was interested in depping for them. And although I couldn't do the gigs because I was already booked, it suddenly dawned on me I had no basses in my collection that looked anything like any of the basses John Deacon had ever used. So it was about time to put that to rights. Fairly obvious black Fender Precision with a black plate, reminiscent of Deaky's black Precision that he used on the Magic Tour and up until the point that he retired in '97. The bass came with a white scratch plate, so I've changed that and a few other things on the bass. Swapped out the hardware. The chrome hardware has been replaced with gold and brass. Gold controls, Wilkinson bridge. Swapped the pickups over for a more punchy and powerful Aguilar 4P60, and then a set of Hipshot tuners and string tree, and that's it. That's how you kind of customize a fairly standard Mexican Precision into something that looks like something John Deacon used and would use, and it sounds great. Done all the tribute gigs that I've done since 2018, and it really does the business. So I know you're probably looking at this thinking this is a Fender Jazz, but it's not. It's a bass center Guy Pratt Betsy signature bass. So this is basically modelled on Guy Pratt's 1964 Burgundy Mist Jazz, previously owned by John Entwistle, was then sold to Dave Gilmour, was then sold to Guy Pratt. But because of the age and the value of Betsy, Guy decided he didn't really want to take it out on the road anymore, so he commissioned the bass center to make him a replacement. The bass came out so well that it's become part of the Bassmasters series at the bass center. Basically a jazz copy with EMGs, active EMGs, matching headstock and ebony fingerboard, and it plays exceptionally well. I reviewed this very bass at the London Bass Guitar Show in 2019. It was so good, I bought it. This is the exact model they had there on demo. So if you tried this bass at the show, this is it. Punch for days, power, volume, finesse, clarity, fabulous, and outstanding value for money. So I'd been a big fan of Lakland basses for some time. I remember playing a custom 5-string back in 1998 at the Bass Centre, which absolutely blew my socks off. Although I hadn't taken the plunge, I'd always kind of looked at them from a distance and thought I really should get one of those one day. Just as we went into lockdown in 2020, I started to think, do you know what, I really need to get one of these. I don't know why, because we weren't guaranteed we were going to get back out to play any shows. This bass appeared at one of the UK bass emporiums, Bass Direct in Warwickshire, second-hand Skyline 5502. The pictures of it on the website just kind of took my breath away. Hopefully you can see the grain, and it plays really, really well. Some really great tones out of this, and I didn't realize about all the mid-range options that you can change internally via the series of dip switches. So this has some really varied bass tones, and I've strung it up with Road Sound pressure wounds, which kind of work really well for this. So it's not overly bright, but it's got plenty of punch, and it just sounds like a really great all-round bass that can cover a lot of mileage. So if you've not checked out these Lakland Skylines, I suggest you do. You'll find affiliate links to various basses, strings and accessories in the description box below. Any purchases you make through the affiliate links will financially help the channel. So here we are in Fender Precision territory again. This is a bass I bought off a bass playing colleague, one of my mentors when I first started playing as a school kid. We remain great friends to this very day. Evening, Gary. This bass was surplus to his requirements, but I had actually looked at this. It's a Fender FSR, which means Fender Special Release 70s Precision, and I had actually looked at these when I was looking at the Mexican Precisions to buy a John Deacon influenced bass. It was very, very different tonally, how it feels, how it plays compared to all the other Precisions I've got. It really does sound like a 70s Precision. It's got grit and it's so throaty in its delivery. The pickup's got something to do with it, the way it's wound, but also we're talking a really serious ash body here. Maple neck, black binding on the side, and it just plays like an absolute beast. So don't ever assume you think you know how a Precision's going to sound. Always test one out, because it might just throw you a curveball. This bass threw me a curveball, and I now use this on quite a lot of Queen tribute gigs. Sometimes it's the backup, sometimes it's the main bass, but it's very different sounding from every other Precision I've got. So we have another GB Guitars Rumour 4-string here. I purchased this bass in 2022 to celebrate my 50th birthday. The story behind this bass is it was originally one of 2 demo models that Bernie Goodfellow put together in probably the late 90s, early 2000s, and he would take these basses around the trade shows to show what his basses could do. It's got the Rumour electronics. It's also got the GB Guitars Sound to Light system, so you've seen it behind me here with the LEDs on. So like I say, this was one of the original demo models. Over time it got used and what have you. Eventually it was resprayed in this very lovely old English white, fitted with a hip shot extender, chrome hardware. What I had done though was, because all my other GB guitars have got humbuckers, the GB humbuckers for the pickups, I decided to have this bass fitted with single coils. So these have specially wound GB single coil pickups in the humbucker housing. So I've been using this bass with Uncle Funk's Disco Inferno, doing lots of disco hits and classics with single coil pickups. This bass has so much twang and bottom end from the GB circuit, it's outrageous, and it sounds very, very different to my other GBs, but I think you'll agree it's a fine looking beast. And if you're wondering what the socket is on the back of the control plate, that allows an adapter to power the LED. So as a demonstration piece, when you've seen it in this video, it's being powered, the batteries aren't on permanently, and that's how this all works. Outstanding. So here we are, the final bass number 33 in this video series, another Status Graphite Empathy. So very much like the red model you saw earlier, this bass was made 3 months after the red one, so they're very close in spec, build quality. I bought this in September 2022, so it's the same spec as the red one, but immaculate, as though it has never been played, and the previous owner has done a great job looking after it. I suspect it was probably purchased, put in its case and put in a cupboard, because I can't find any dings, knocks, scrapes or any evidence that this thing has been played. But just like the red one, it's an outstanding bass. Graphite neck, 11-piece laminate body, outstanding. And I'm so pleased that I've got a backup to the red one, so if anything ever happens to that, I've got another virtually identical bass in terms of sound and playability. And that wraps the video up. If you've managed to get this far and you've sat through the whole video, thank you very much. I hope you enjoyed that journey through my bass collection. There's quite a few, I think you'll agree, but those basses have basically covered most of my career, apart from 14 basses that have come in and gone out over the years, some of them doing a lot of gigs, some not. But thank you. If you've enjoyed the video, please give the video a thumbs up. If you haven't already subscribed to the channel, feel free to hit the subscribe button and hit the notification bell. If you've got any questions or comments regarding any of the basses or any of the material that I've talked about here in this video, leave them in the comments section underneath the video and I'll come back to you as soon as I see them appear. If you really enjoyed the video, feel free to hit the super thanks button underneath this video screen. That will allow you to make a donation to the channel, and any donations are very gratefully received. Any videos, review videos, demo videos that I've referred to during this video, you'll find links for them in the description box below, and you'll also find that the video is broken up into chapters. So if you've come towards the end of the video and you want to jump back and find certain basses, the whole video is chaptered. So you can either go to the description box, click on the timestamp, that will take you through to that particular bass, or the other option is to go to the timeline that's on this video and you'll see little dots, breaker marks, and you can hit those and it will take you straight to that part of the video. If you want to hear demos and sound bites of how any of these basses sound, feel free to check out the reviews and the demo videos elsewhere on the channel. If you want to learn anything extra about any of the basses featured in this video, feel free to check out the playlists, which are broken down into reviews, demos and manufacturers. In the description box below you'll find affiliate links, so if you wish to buy any of the basses featured here, if they're available on the sites that I'm affiliated to, or if you wish to buy any bass accessories such as strings, any purchases you make through those affiliate links will lead to the channel earning a commission. Thank you. If you're a fan of the channel, thank you for all the comments, all the likes, all the thumbs ups, all of the subscribers. Thank you. I really do appreciate it. So I hope you enjoyed the video. Hope you enjoyed looking at my bass collection and the stories that go with these various basses. Look forward to seeing you again on the channel. Until next time, take it easy.